Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts, etc. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else from Great Memes.
Hey girls, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good. That guy was cool. I liked what you guys were talking about towards the end, like mitigation. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation, especially about how you can do spiritual work from a distance and why you might, I have some friends who work in medicine, in hospitals and things like that. And it seems like a real big burden to be that close to people that are sick. Like it does something to you spiritually to be, if you're constantly surrounded with all of the suffering and all of the, maybe people are possessed by demons. And I don't know, man. I think about that way too much. Did you get a haircut, Kurt? Look at you. Look at you.
That's me.
Look
How y'all
clean
doing?
cut you are. A clean cut looking boy, Nice work. Nice work.
It's less
Yeah.
fun this way.
Yeah, I like that people are becoming more spiritual in all sorts of different flavors, or metaphysical, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. I've been wondering a lot about where material versus spirit is headed, because you got a lot of people that are getting to a smaller and smaller nano, right? It's all, the more nano you get, the more it's like particle wave duality. And so many people that believe in material science aren't spiritualists, but then there's so many people that are spiritualists who aren't into material at all. And I think it's just as bad. Like the material is real too. Otherwise we wouldn't be having to use all this equipment to talk to each other over all these like artificial concepts of distance and space time. And so clearly material reality is something, but then there's like computers, and the fact that you get into like technology and virtual space, I think that like bleeds together spirit and material to a level. And maybe, I'm hoping we're getting to a point where we acknowledge both better.
Yeah, I mean, personally, it's hard to actually like come forth and say, oh, this is what you should do, because like I've never guided anyone's spiritual. I've only ever guided myself, and I know like what works for me and what didn't. Like before I even believed in God or energy or even like considered a soul and stuff like that. I don't know. Life was definitely darker, I guess. It's like he put it, you're kind of like an isolated island of a human when it's just you, your body and your brain and no soul. It's like, like after changing that, I was like, I don't want to go back to that. That was brutal. I mean, I'm not saying like I became religious, and I'm not even saying any religion is wrong. It's just, I needed something. I didn't even know I needed something, but like I needed some meta narrative or something. You're muted.
Sorry, I was gonna say, what do you think about spirit, Kurt? Are you a spiritualist by any stretch of the imagination?
Hey, sure. You know how sometimes words take on different connotations if you add an ist at the end of it?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
So I don't want to I think the term spiritualist can be used in multiple contexts, if I remember correctly. But yeah, sure, it's all just spirituality. That's all it is. It's like one thing I think about very frequently is you take the earth, you take something like the earth, and we're on it, and that's pretty cool. But think about how small of a percentage it is, the amount of space that's actually habitable on planet Earth compared to its volume and its mass. It's almost like microscopic in comparison. Like when you zoom out, it's like all those like people, those two people that were trapped in space, how many miles they are away from the surface, that's such a fraction, of a percentage distance away from the Earth's surface compared to, the Earth's diameter. It's like just going that little bit of a distance exposes them to so much radiation, so much danger, so much body, I'll call it morphology. They really have to adjust themselves when they get back to Earth. It's so crazy. I think really half of our problems as a species just come kind of from our collective egos, but not remembering, how frivolous all of it is in the grand scheme of things. That can sound depressing. I don't think it's like it's a big horseshoe, that's the big horseshoe of, nihilism versus, spirituality. It's like that can be an awesome thing, or it can be, just a really lame, crappy thing. But I think it can really help you appreciate life, appreciate that we're here, the fact that it's so small. One big wave, one earthquake that was bad enough could just wash us all over. It's like,
but you're basically speaking to the insignificance of the individual human, which obviously is true in a material level. You can't deny that. If any one of us were to die, nothing about the world would fundamentally change. I get that. That's true. However, you could think, right? You're a thinking being, you're a conscious human being, right? And you're of the universe. So like one of the logical sequences that led me to quote unquote spiritual awakening was when I was like, life isn't happening to you. You're not happening to life. Life is not happening for you. Life is not happening through you. Essentially, you are life. You are a focal point of the vast universe experiencing itself. And this is true because you're a human. You're born of the universe. You could think, can't you? And you're not bigger than the universe. So therefore, the universe is on some level an intelligent being, at the very least, through you. So this is how I could reconcile like materialist truth, which is we are all insignificant meat sacks, just, crawling around on a rock. But then there's also the parallel truth, which is we are all the universe experiencing itself. Both things can be true. And that's your reconciliation.
What do you think about? Go ahead.
I have a little anecdote to follow it up. Think about, I think there's so much life in the universe, like so much life that we don't realize it.
There's no intelligent life, not on Earth anyway.
Well, so I read about Chernobyl. There's this amazing fungus that is growing in Chernobyl. And scientists, they can't prove, but they think when it's around gamma radiation, it looks like it actually converts the gamma radiation into energy. And they can take
Cladosporium, Spermum, the Clado.
Yeah, something of that. It's been a few days. I didn't quite retain all the information, but it is pretty awesome because now they're thinking, well, like a centimeter of like this fungus, it can block a significant amount of gamma radiation, and it's supposed that up to about 20 to 21 centimeters could actually totally block all gamma radiation from a source. So you could actually, make a capsule or like insulate a space station with this fungus. And it could be really innovative technology. But you think about all these, I think they're called extremophiles. They grow really, really harsh conditions. You go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, there's organisms that live, like above like 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I think Celsius too. There's things that exist under extreme pressure.
Those scaly-foot gastropods that look kind of like something out of Alien versus Predator or something. They're these volcano snails. Yeah.
So even if humans went extinct, I think life on Earth would be fine for a very long time. Generally speaking, it's all about would it be conducive to mammals if something extreme were to happen. So I think the fact that life continues despite all of that danger, I think that's a huge nod to the spiritual nature of things, and just the resilience of life to even exist at all. Most of the world is, of course, empty space. Most of what's between particles is space, but the fact that it can come together and interact at all is nothing short of an amazing miracle. That's pretty cool. Those are pretty cool things to think about. It's cooler to think about those things than tariffs and Putin and world leaders saying "fuck you" to each other.
Well, they're
Even though-
correlated because, like, I mean, if anything, from the perspective of a world leader, nothing like they paint this fact the best. Probably, well, it's not even a fact. It's mostly like a shift in perspective. You're either going to go one or the other. You're going to think reality is downstream from consciousness, or that your consciousness is downstream from material reality. That's one of the thresholds. Like, I feel like, for a spiritual perspective, there's different like logical thresholds that you kind of either break past or you just stay behind forever until you die. One being, we're just insignificant, like, nothing but like physical beings just on this rock, and, nothing we do really amounts to anything. And okay, so if you break past that, and then the next one is the reality being downstream from consciousness. And it's even more pertinent when you hear about like all the world leaders like actually being studied on metaphysics and Gnosticism and all that shit. So, I mean, it's a chicken, or in that sense, it's a chicken or the egg situation. Like, did they get into it because of their position, or did they get their position because they were into it?
And what do you think about quantum entanglement? So this idea that we're all the time and all the distance in the world doesn't change anything really at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, because everything comes back and started from the same singular source. I saw my mom on Ash Wednesday, and she had ashes on her Catholic forehead. And I was like, "You got some dirt on your face?" And she's like, "Yeah, I got stardust all over me, because we're all made of stardust." It's like, cool, Sardinian mom. But what do you feel about that idea, really, that all of this, we really are, that life itself? I mean, answer that before I go even further down a rabbit hole into what life is.
In regards to quantum entanglement?
Yeah, how do you feel like there's something to that idea that we're all entangled, and like even the most far-flung, distant, different things, we're all started out from like one singular, we're all one.
Yeah, source, God, or however, whatever label you want to ascribe to it. But yeah, I believe in that. I also believe that the reason why we have trouble seeing it in its entirety is because it probably transcends like space and time in some significant way. Like, I kind of mess around with that when I say things like, you should make contact with your past and your future selves and start like operating as a unit, as opposed to three separate yous. It's like, instead, try forgiving your past self, like be there for your past self, be there to support your past self, and then ask your future self for guidance. Do your future self some favors, like, don't steal happiness from your future self, like be on the same team. And that's kind of like breaking past some of the material confines of just being like in this coordinate of space and time, I think, because we could just do this all with our heads, And if you want to like add the quantum aspect of it, some people are like, oh, well, how do I know I'm actually making contact with my future self and not just a figment of my imagination? Well, I mean, doesn't every version of your future self essentially start out as a figment of your imagination? Like the future you that goes to take a piss in 2 minutes, like that had to start somewhere, and it didn't just come out of nowhere,
What do you think, Kurt? Are you a quantum entangled being? Are we all one quantum entangled being? Which one?
Heck yeah, we're entangled. We're entangled. Me and Andreas are basically inside each other right now. Not to give away anything, but that is exactly what's happening. Like it explains all of the paranormal phenomena all around us all the time. That one Russian girl that can burn people explains why you can insert yourself into other people's dreams while you're dreaming. It's scientific fact, and I have a citation for that. I'll go ahead and put it in the comment section later on.
So you're saying quantum entanglement is gay, and I'm not arguing. I think that's great. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's yes, it is, and that's of course not a bad thing whatsoever. It's
not that there's anything wrong with that. Yeah,
I think heterosexual relationships are a little bit gay. That's just my opinion. It's just like it's a sliding scale. They're not as gay as fully gay relationships, but there's still a percentage of gayness that's required to have sexual contact with something that's basically the same thing as you are. You know, it's like the more you think about it, everything's just a little bit gay.
Yeah, everything's quantum entangled anyway, or maybe even transcends gay because everything was one.
Yeah, but unless it wasn't, that's the other thing. So it was like, is there like a heterodimensional quality where the darkness and the light are a dynamic force? You know, maybe there's something, is the yin yang.
Yeah, I was
heteroduality.
just thinking for that you might want to turn to like Taoism or something because they really like mess around. But even Gnosticism, well, I guess Hermeticism, they claim that like everything has a gender. You know, like everything has a masculine and a feminine aspect to it, which is interesting. And one of the reasons why I like thinking about like quantum entanglement is because it makes a person like really think about causality. And, you know, that could be a really slippery thing to think about for some people, because if you really ponder causality, it forces you to take responsibility for a lot of shit. You know, like it's like a lot of people believe that things just happen, that there's no real cause, that, you know, such unfortunate things just befall us, and, you know, we're victims to fate, which, you know, can be true from like an individual perspective. But if you do like learn some of these like metaphysical traditions and practices, like one of the biggest principles that you have to get over is like a cause and effect aspect of everything. No matter what bad things happen, no matter what good things happen, like there's always a cause and effect dynamic going on, even if we don't know what that cause is, even if our logic can't really rationalize it, it's still there somewhere, you know?
I get real nervous because the only thing that gives me anxiety is just well, it's possible we never existed outside of some sort of surveillance state. It's so weird. It's like if you have contact with any other person, like I think we live in a high gossip society. It's possible we always did, but like I think if you talk to a few people, chances are they will talk about those interactions that they had with you. And that's, the more I think about it, the less I want to actually talk to people. Like, it's not because I'm afraid of it. It's just because, well, it's like it's like it's a compounding effect. Everything that you do, it really just snowballs into something else, you know? And so that's why it's like, oh, if I just, it's like you won't hurt any butterflies. You won't hurt any butterflies if you stay silent a lot in your personal time. So I could be killing a lot of butterflies on this podcast, but I hope I'm not. I hope you all are doing well.
Butterflies, they aren't what they used to be, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally,
caterpillars.
I totally feel you too. It's like on the certain drive to like step aside. I mean, it's hard too. Like the more you get into something, the more you invest passion and emotion into something, the less easier it is to do that. Like swordsmanship, for example. I teach it. You know, I never really thought of myself as a teacher so much, but I always enjoyed being a student more because, you know, learning is fun. But, you know, when I'm called like a good student, it's a good teacher, it sends like alarm bells in my head. And my immediate reaction is, I just had great teachers myself, you know, like that's really what it is. I'm a good teacher because I had great teachers, and ideally maybe someday you'll become the great teacher, you know, and that's how I want to look at it. I want to look at it as you know, things like the reason why I want to like take myself out of that picture and just like kind of like focus on the actual act and the art. It's because, yeah, it's for that reason. Like I want to preserve this thing. I don't necessarily want to hijack it or make it attributed all to me, because that's like uncomfortable, I guess.
Well, there's like the show we did earlier, we're talking about how many people think they're coming up with ideas or that they think their ideas are based on logic. So, for instance, the idea that the Anunnaki built us and that we can be gods like the Anunnaki. A lot of normal people believe that, not because they're conspiracy theorists, but because they saw it on Grandpa's History Channel after the World War II docs, right? So it's become like mainstream acceptable ideas. Same with a lot of medicine. A lot of doctors don't believe in modern germ theory because of school, but because they saw some sort of biohazard film, some sort of like horror film about a virus or a quarantine outbreak, I think is the movie I'm thinking of, with the monkeys and things like that.
Good movie.
That affected me at 9 or 10 years old. I totally would have, if I weren't me, I would probably believe everything I saw in that movie, because why would they lie? You know, if I was a doctor and I was like, yeah, this is like that movie Outbreak, subconsciously it's programming you. And Kurt brought up earlier the idea of, you know, mushrooms from space or something. Well, the idea that we could maybe like bring some sort of we could cover a spaceship in some sort of a, you know, chlorosporium, some sort of like gamma radiation eating mushroom, and how innovative that idea is. There's other ideas like that where they could cover the outside of a spaceship in dirt and rock, right? So that particles would have to go through the dirt and rock. And at a certain point, you're talking about a planet, like you heard in third grade. You know, it's like you got mushrooms covering some rock that's keeping your spheroid space station safe. That's, I mean, this is about as innovative as the description on the back of your Dr. Bronner's soap, right? That we're in Spaceship Earth. So how much of these ideas that we think we're coming up with are programmed into us so that we're not only thinking about that's the way things could be, but that if that's the way things could be, then that's the way things are. And this might just be some sort of epistemological trap.
See, I thought about that, and like I was worried because I felt like if I obsess too much over like the hows and the whys, as opposed to like, let's get it right first. Like, let's make sure I'm actually doing energy practices correctly. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up like self-destructing, I guess. But then after that, yeah, I guess it is kind of easy to be like, where and why did like were we gifted consciousness? I mean, and there's so many fun little threads to pull on, like the Bible, for example. Like first God gave us the word, and it's true. It's like if you could make words out of something, you're basically going from 0 to 1. You're making something out of nothing. And it's like words are a very potent way of doing that. And that has to do directly with like interaction of 3D reality of your consciousness and, you know, your surroundings by using words. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. And there's also the Anunnaki stuff, which I'm a huge fan of. You know, like I like the idea that some gods like made us, and then they were like, these things are too sexy. We have to take a couple as wives and then let's make babies with them. It's like some mad scientist shit, really. It's like, okay, you just you couldn't get any Anunnaki girlfriend, so you had to like snag up one of these monkey hybrids. And who knows what kind of like implications that had on like generations in the future, right?
What do you think about monkey hybrids, Kurt?
Apparently we could make a couple of them. There's I don't know for sure, but if I remember correctly, I think human monkey hybrids are a theoretical possibility. One species, just no one's been perverted enough to go about it yet.
Oh, I mean, the Russians tried it, right? You know about the Humanzi project? The Humanzi project was a Soviet Humanzi. It was a project, let's see, possibility. St. Peter Damian talked about it. Antonio Zucchelli, the Franciscan. All the Jesuits were really interested in Humanzis. Edward Koch in England. I think Russia, where's it at? Stalinist Russia, Soviet. Yeah, Ilyanov. Yeah. Let's find that. The Soviet 8-man scandal. Right. So there definitely have been efforts made to dehumanize and to uplift. So that's the other question. What do you think or is it more likely that we're going to see the dehumanization of a humanity or the uplifting of a chimp towards more planet
godhood?
Apes? Yeah, godhood, right? Is it apotheosis or is it apotheosis, where we're returning to the primal source instead of becoming gods?
I mean, it's really easy to look at that, right, and be like, that's the spiritual battle of our time. I'm sorry, I feel like Kurt was going to say something.
Oh, no, I mean, so when, so there's a lot of animals out there when, I forget what it's called when the polar bear does it with a brown bear, the Pizzly bear, I think that's what they're calling it. And it's increasingly, It is a hybrid, but it's a hybrid that is capable of reproduction. So,
like the dolphin.
Yeah, it's something that is happening in nature. Do we call those bears sinful? Those bears aren't sinful. They're just fighting for survival.
Sinful bears would be a good band name, by the way.
So I think, you know, all these single lonely men out there, if that's all they can find, you know, it's just all these, you know, monkey hybrids. It's like, well, they're just doing what animals do. You know, you can't really blame them. It's Those aren't the thing is, will those hybrids be sterile or not? I don't know. Will they be smart enough to create societies, or will they just kind of still swing from branches? I don't know.
I mean, isn't that a society? Like, how much is it that our idea of we're impressed by humanity because we're so terrible at being in nature, we have to kill other animals to wear their skins to survive it. You know, we can't see like an eagle, so we build telescopes. It seems like humans excel because of their inferiority complex.
Well, is it a complex, or is it like an actual natural and physical inferiority? Because, like, I mean, if you look at us,
we're far weaker than other apes.
Yeah. So it's almost like that forces us to find like technological solutions rooted in science and whatnot. I mean, if anything, it's like it's making our greatest gift into like a pathology, you know, as far as the world is concerned, right? Because what pretty much propelled us is now like destroying. But I don't know. Sometimes I think there's other ways to look at it. You know, maybe the Earth really is just an incubator for us, for something like us to come out eventually and do greater things beyond just Earth, because Earth isn't forever. We can't stay here forever. It's I mean, maybe we can actually, you know, now that I think about it, if we manage to get our shit together and get a Dyson sphere together or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about what some people will say, that we are weakened as a trade-off. Like, you know, if it's top down, then we're made more intelligent, but taken away our natural strength. Because this idea that if we're descendant from primates that are similar to us, what's this big difference? It seems like it's like a handicap given to us that we have a physical lack of strength. But I don't know. Kurt, your thoughts?
Someone in the comments said humans aren't animals. I disagree. We are animals, but the trade-off is, well, how do you reconcile that with spirituality and religion? The reconciliation is that animals have souls too, you know? They're just different souls, but they're souls nonetheless. So it's like, well, if everything is under the kingdom of God, we can all be animals, and that's not really insulting to our intelligence, or that's not insulting to anything. We're animals that exist in the glory of that higher power. Sorry, I got distracted. I was gonna spring off of that. Well, you had a more direct question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can spring off that if you want to. I'm thinking about that trade-off of strength and like why you think we don't have the strength, you know. I mean, it's whatever you want.
It's always strength in what context, you know. Strength.
So like an ant could carry you off if it was the size of your fist, right? And so a primate, like a monk, yeah, well, I mean, that's part of it, I guess. But yeah, okay, what were you going to say? There's different kinds of strength besides physical.
Oh yeah, we've our strength, you could say, has just been a really large capacity to survive by expansion. You know, it's really kind of been a not just, you know, being an invasive species. In some senses, we've been kind of an invasive species, you know, for certain. If you're viewing everything as objectively as possible, we have had elements of invasion, but it's not because, you know, we've had a really rapid reproduction rate at every point in history. It's that we've been able to stabilize and use resources to our own advantage, and be able to somewhat use our rationality to build things to protect us from natural forces. And it's almost to the point where you could argue some societies are almost totally protected from the forces of nature. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily because of our inventions. It could be simply because we migrated to areas that have extreme natural protection, like Switzerland. You know, that's part of the reason probably why Switzerland has been able to place neutral so much in so many wars. They're protected by their own geography very, very efficiently. So like we've had strategical strength in ways that other animals might not have the capacity for. But, you know, animals can surprise you when it comes to many areas as well. So that's a strength, and sometimes your biggest strength can also be your biggest weakness as well. So, yeah, Yeah.
I think what impresses me the most about humans, like some innate human strength, is unlike like pretty much every other animal on this fucking earth. You know, which basically like, especially if you're a mammal, like one of your two prime directives is to eat and to fuck, right? Humans are almost like less dense, you know, materially, like less animal-like in a sense where they could actually deny themselves. Humans have the capacity to deny their instinct of eating and eating and eating and fucking and fucking fucking and killing and killing and killing. Like we have the ability to deny ourselves of our animal instincts. I'm not saying we should, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I'm saying that it's interesting how like we're really good at that. Meaning besides our like technological inventions and stuff, we were still able to come up with things like disciplines like philosophy or like crafts, you know, and that really takes like restraint, you know. That I think that's a testament to the human ability of restraint, you know. It's like yes, like all animals, we do want to eat, fucking sometimes kill on occasion, but I think like one of the biggest like things that we can do that no other animal seems to be able to do as well is that like animalistic restraint, you know. And I think that's cool, and out of that restraint we invent cool constructs like, I don't know, like martial arts or art or sports or something.
Do you think there are like evil people that are bringing down the general consciousness of everyone else? I mean, there's
Hell
obviously
yeah.
people that want to bring it up, but yeah,
Hell yeah. Dude, put it this way, they don't even have to be evil, right? If I just wanted a population that I could control and manipulate, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I would want them to be low frequency. I would want them to be low consciousness because they're easy to predict. Then it's like you're not dealing with demigods, then you're just dealing with cattle. You're dealing with animals. So of course, I think in fact, that should confirm the conspiracy more than ever. It's about control, and I think even from the perspective of an evil world leader, quote unquote, yeah, I think I would rather manage like a bunch of like dumb meat sacks than like spiritually awakened demigods, you know.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. I think it's a cyclical problem when it comes to elitism. There's that almost, you could argue that it's somewhat subconscious, but it's fully conscious too. You know, people know what they're doing. It's that psychological effect where you or people think it's safer to be the sheepdog than it is the sheep. It's more effective to just have a controlled population so that you protect yourself and you protect your own kind, your own breed. But that always comes with problems too. Sometimes that definitely sends us culturally backward. And I think that's sending us culturally backward as a society right now. And the trouble is, like, if it's taken to extremes, it comes with horrible consequences for everyone involved, even the people at the tops. And I don't think a lot of sometimes when things funnel upward and you try to make a makeshift meritocracy where you just assume people at the top got there by inherently deserving it, that of course causes problems too, because when you have a few idiots that get thrown into that bunch, even if the elites are elites, once you get a certain percentage of idiots within that elite population, it becomes super dangerous for themselves, and it becomes dangerous for everyone else too. So it's like, what do you do about that?
You get that Epstein shit, that Hunter Biden shit.
Yeah, that's the shout outs to everyone that thought we were getting the Epstein list. Yeah, I have friends that got hyped up about that for like 48 hours, and I was like, sorry. I mean, sorry, bro, but like, I would have liked to see them too. Yes, but like, did you really think it was going to happen? Do you still think it's going to happen? I don't know.
You can tell exactly how old someone is. There's like a formula, like how old you are versus how much life experience you are based on your optimism versus cynicism.
Yeah, I want skepticism versus cynicism or versus experience. And so like I come on here as like, sometimes I sound like the most negative person in the world, but like
no,
I've
met the most negative person in the world. Okay, it's my dad.
Oh heck yeah! I'm at least second place. That's nice. But no, I think when you some things about reality or about the world that people have created, it can be objectively bad or not beneficial to certain things or objectives or human happiness and harmony, you know, those things. And when you point them out, they are going to sound really, really bad. And it's hard to, you know, detach yourself from that and get people to say, like, oh, you're just being negative. Like, no, I'm not. I'm saying it's like, it's just, if you say water is wet, well, if someone there's someone out there that can assume, you know, water being wet is a bad thing, and you just sound terrible for pointing it out. But I think that's the bad thing. That is the bad thing about the current world that we live in. Is like, we seem to be cycling back, you know, to the early problems of capitalism in the early 20th century. A lot of that was put to bed because, well, we did the whole, you know. We introduced communism for a short amount of time, you know, and we had the whole New Deal and everything. There were problems with that New Deal, of course, but it put to bed a lot of the problems that came out of, you know, the robber baron culture of the early society. And now we seem to be dipping back into that robber baron culture, and it's like, what do you do about that now? You know, it's do we reintroduce, you know, socialist programs that we are going to have to deal with 50 years from now? Who knows what the answer is? But anytime you talk about that, it can seem like you're just being really, really negative.
Well,
But
I have a solution though. Next time you feel like you're being really negative, and you don't even have to do this out loud. I swear to God, this works because I do it all the effing time. Just say in your head, just, I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this cigarette. I'm thankful for this idiot that's wasting my time. I'm thankful for this cookie. Just anything. I swear, for some reason. Maybe it's like something related to God, I don't know, or divinity, but I just know, like, gratitude.
Hell yeah, it is. It's called love your enemies. I wonder who said that.
Well, I'm just gratitude, and I think that's why that's the kind of idea that's going to spread, especially now that we have the internet and we have podcasting platforms. Like, you could see actual embodiments of gratitude and what it could do to, like, take such a force in. And you could still be as cynical as you want. I'm a cynical asshole, but I could at least say, like, every day I wake up and I'm thankful to be waking up, and it helps me make better decisions. Helps me at least treat people better, you know?
Well, you can't, there's also the aspect we can't really save people from themselves all the time. And that's,
Why not? Can't you just, like, what if you put everyone into camp? You know, I mean, like, seriously, like, taught them to concentrate. No, I mean, if you got a bunch of people running every day and you made them eat healthy food every day and you took away their options for free, laying around doing nothing, I mean, couldn't you force an entire group of people? And it's as much as we make that sound so terrible, isn't that what we do to people? We put them through preschool, kindergarten, school. You know, people are always saying that children are, you know, they're too spoiled if they're not strictly forced to do homework that they don't want to do. Aren't we kind of forcing people down a path? And isn't that what society is doing to people on purpose?
It is true in Pennsylvania that a major architect that designed all the prisons also designed a lot of our public school buildings.
Of course, yeah, that's true everywhere. Because if you're an architect, a municipal architect, you're going to be doing this. The city's going to pay you to do the parking lot. You're going to pay you to do the prison. They're going to pay you to do the school. And that ends up pretty practical in case you have to put a bunch of barbed wire around your parking structure to traffic a bunch of people into one of those buildings or another one of those buildings. I mean, it's clearly, yeah, you're on something. Yep.
But what do we think about when we hear the word institution? Do we think good thoughts, or do we think, oh shit, bad thoughts? You know,
it depends.
I think good thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know why. Because if it's like the Institution for Psychedelic Multidisciplinary Studies, yeah, but if it's like MAPS, you know, it's like the Institution for Psychedelic Research, that sounds cool to a lot of people. But if it's like an institution where you're institutionalized, like instantly jail. You associate it with jail, or worse, I would associate it with a mental psych ward where they, you know, zap your brain like in Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. No, I mean, like that is like the worst you could possibly get, right? Other than like just dying is being imprisoned. And then I guess the highest point in society is, I guess, being a billionaire or whatever. But
I was going to say it's far worse than dying. So this is the thing that scares me, is that people think that way, that death is the worst thing. Death's not the worst thing. There are so many things worse than death. At least losing your freedom, like you said, is fundamentally so much worse that, you know, I would gladly die for your freedom, or like I would gladly die instead of having no freedom of my own. And I can think of people would never want their family to die, right? But wouldn't you sacrifice everything you love for the freedom of everyone? So isn't it true that you're willing to die against freedom? I mean, freedom is more valuable than death. Death can happen over and over again for a lot of people, right?
The freedom to actualize.
This is my experience so far. This is connected to one thing I was thinking earlier, and I mean throughout the week, but the people that have the most issues and problems with dying when it's like knocking on their door and they just, struggle on their way out, they tend to be the elites. They tend to be, people that have been very well off and been very benefited, by our mass consumer culture over the past 50 years. They're the people that have been most sheltered from the idea of death. And they think, they're transhumanist without, identifying themselves as transhumanist. And so, like, I am seeing that now. It's like, I mentioned, the whole Tony Robbins culture that taught a whole lot of business owners and leaders of the 1980s. It's like that is going to catch up with people very quickly, because what a lot of these things that were instilled in these people, it did not teach them how to, think of themselves as mortal beings. It taught them how to market themselves and market their product in a way that was a little bit dehumanizing to themselves and the people around them. So it's like it's so hard to reconcile that for a lot of people once they approach that mortality. It's like you're dealing with an 8-year-old child. For a lot of people, money insulates you a lot. It's hard to become rich. It's hard to become rich and also resist that temptation of it to shelter you from the reality of your being. And it's why, in the Bible, it's harder to get in the kingdom of heaven. It's very hard to get in the kingdom of heaven. It's more likely, to fit a camel through the eye of a needle. That's what the verse says. The reason why that is because it's so hard to resist all of the temptations that come with all that wealth and all that's grandeur and all that's potential over-the-top consumption and spending and thinking, and the potential to think you're better than everyone else. Some people fall for that temptation.
You know what I also noticed? Like, people who want to have it just to have it, their tastes are like a little less refined. Like, like rich people who could afford cars, and the cars they get are always like some like cookie cutter, extremely loaded luxury brand sedan or something that has like 800 horsepower or whatever. And then you look at like, some guy in North Carolina and he's got this like sick one of a kind piece that's like his daily driver, but it just screams. And I don't know, it's interesting. I've noticed things like that. Like, like a jewelry maker would probably have a better taste in jewelry than the rich people buying the stuff, right?
Yeah, well, rich people do jewelry differently. This is completely off the point, maybe, but
sorry about that. I'm sorry for derailing.
No, I just was thinking about that for a second though, because I saw this lady who was wearing like a bunch of freaking rocks. You know what I mean? And it's like she's so rich, and this necklace was made of gems. Really, each gem was probably worth like $1,300 to $8,000 a piece, and so she's wearing like 60 grand worth of gems, and it's not a very pretty necklace, but it's saying something both because she doesn't necessarily care what I think about it. You know what I mean? She's got so much money. Maybe she does. There's certain kinds of people that are obsessed with that, but she's also thinking like these are her medicine stones, and she paid top dollar to have this therapy essentially. So I think rich people do it a bit differently. But yeah, sorry, Kurt.
No need to be sorry. It's so if you're doing what God or Jesus wants you to do, I'm not being exclusive to other religions by saying that. I'm just bringing up spirituality. Like if you have compassion for your enemies, have compassion for all beings, see a little bit of yourself in all those beings, and do the actionable thing of loving it. What do you do about that? It's like, because like those people that fear death at the top, it's like they have conditioned themselves not to listen to the small person or to listen to smaller forces. So it's almost like you are almost powerless to help these people. That's what it feels. In order to have compassion for these people, it's almost like, well, I'm just stuck feeling bad for them because I can't tell them their reality, because they'll just tell me to fuck off, they'll fire you, whatever position they're in. And so it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what the true answer is.
I think though, if you may not have to tell them anything about it, but if you like, I guess, just embody the higher consciousness, which to me just means making the decisions as a person with a soul connected to source, divine, whatever, then I guess you start treating people as just different versions of you, right? If every soul is just a fractalization of the Godhead, of the God soul, then we all come from, like, our souls are just the water drops from the ocean that is God, right? So I could look at you or anyone, like someone pissing me off at work, and I'm like, well, he's just another version of me going through his own little lifetime journey, and so am I. And I don't know, it helps me, like, well, A, it helps me like get over things and not take things so personal, but B, it helps you be compassionate without pity. You know, it's like, yeah, I guess I wouldn't do my journey the way you're doing it, but ultimately we all go back to the same box after the game, you know?
Yeah, it's always helpful to be powerfully compassionate. I think that level, it also makes you fear other people less to a degree. Maybe, you know, I could have been, I wouldn't say I'm around a tough crowd, but all right, so over this past week, I rewatched the movie Friday. I think it's a pretty good movie. Yeah, it's still a pretty good movie. Yeah, Friday's good. I don't remember the sequels, but I think almost everyone that watched the original Friday remembers it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is it's still a very unique movie. I think, you know, in a way it's kind of alarming because you would rather not, you know, well, also what's funny about it is because you look at the main family of Craig. They live in like a 3-bedroom house. That almost seems like impossible for everyone. It's almost like they almost had it decent back then compared to what a lot of people have it now. You know, it's a lot of minorities probably are worse off now than they were 30, 40 years ago. That's bad to think about. But when it comes to, you know, compassion, seeing yourself in other people, it's like, well, how do you empathize with the worst characters in all of that? How do you empathize with people that are struggling? It's I'm trying to make some sort of comparison. You know, the characters are Smokey. The characters are Smokey, Craig. They're the main protagonists. Everybody has their struggles. It seems Craig deals with a lot throughout the day, right? Like, he has his girlfriend that's a little bit nutty and keeps calling the house, and she won't leave him alone. He has his mom and dad. His mom was cooking breakfast, like a humongous breakfast. It was like, this ain't for you, this is just for me. It was kind of funny, but it doesn't mean they don't love them. It turns out, you know, his mom and dad love him very much. There's the girl that goes to see Smokey, who says she looks like Janet Jackson, but she's not quite, you know, not quite Janet Jackson. And then Smokey basically tells her to buzz off, but in a polite way. You know, you got to give him points because he was young, but maybe he was somewhat polite about rejecting that person, you know. But he probably could have been more wholesome. He probably could have been less shallow. Like, all right, let's go on a date. Nothing wrong with going on a date. I don't think she was that bad looking. She was heavier, but she wasn't, you know. And she had a wig. You know, what's wrong with a wig? You know, some people really like that short-haired look as well. But I don't know. You never know. Different strokes for different folks. I'm kind of rambling, but if you just watch it, I think the movie is great at teaching you a certain level of compassion for every character. And so by the end of it, Craig ends up standing up for the people that he loves by taking on Debo. And he does it in a way where his father tells him, you know, you're more of a man without the gun. He ends up, you know, even though he does use a 2x4 and a garbage can and a brick, you know, to beat up Debo, he does it in a way that preserves Debo's life, you know, and he gets humiliated in a way where he probably won't cause people problems for a while, you know. It's there's great psychological elements in the movie, but yeah, I think there's a lot of overlapping themes there. I don't want to, yeah, all right, I don't want to rant too much.
So if anyone's not feeling compassionate enough in life, you should watch the movie Friday immediately, and exactly. that'll turn you into a paragon of human compassion.
And that one about not drinking juice in the hood.
Don't drink the juice in the hood while being a menace to South Side. I don't know. It was some crazy name. Menace to Society. And then there was "Don't be a menace to society while drinking juice in the hood."
It's don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. And then there's menace to society.
That was a great movie. Yeah. I don't know, for some reason it's like I never found myself actively like being like a huge fan of crime dramas, but every time I see them I'm always like, man, that was a pretty sick movie. I mean, the Koreans do it good, the Italian mafia ones are always good. I like the Irish mob ones too. And Menace to Society, of course. What about you, Kurt? You like any crime dramas, crime thrillers?
Oh, okay. There's kind of one. If you never watched the series Hannibal, the series Hannibal is really, really good.
I like that one.
It's amazing. The first season starts out a little bit slow and a little bit, it has more elements of like crime drama or like pop crime drama, and it's still good, but it's not like TV perfection. But once you get into season 2, they really get deep into book source material. They turn it into a psychological thriller, and well, yeah, a really deep psychological thriller that really makes Mads Mikkelsen. You wouldn't think anybody could, make as good of a Hannibal Lecter as the other guy. What was his name?
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, Hopkins. You wouldn't think anybody could, give Hopkins a run for his money. But, Mads Mikkelsen, he was phenomenal on the role. Like, I don't think they could have gotten a better person.
All Scandinavian people. I think you could take any Danish person and they'd all seem like a Hannibal Lecter character if they just don't smile.
Yeah. What's weird? Did you watch the newest season of Squid Game?
Mm-hmm.
Not yet.
Yeah,
but you guys go for it. I don't mind spoilers. And anyone here, you don't care either. Just be honest.
No, it seemed like they had the Asian Hannibal Lecter. No, the Asian Mads Mikkelsen is like the bad guy, and it's.
I love that guy.
There must be something about those facial features that just make people into a great psychopath. You know what I mean? Like, he looks so much like Mads Mikkelsen. It's crazy. If you pull up the two photos, you'll be like, you'll think they're somehow related. It's insane, but they're both insanely good actors too for what they're doing. There's something about someone that plays just a phenomenal villain that just that makes you appreciate it. But yeah, that I highly recommend that. Like, if you got a weekend where you just want to knock something out, get enveloped in it. All 3 seasons of Hannibal. Watch the first one to prep yourself, and then 2 and 3, they hold up. So I think as you mature, some shows don't hold up as well throughout your maturation process. But that's one show that still holds up very well.
Here's one that kind of gets me though, is like I was looking at these pictures earlier of these kids watching TV, because let's go like from the middle here. First, like I actually saw a bunch of kids all hanging out in a park, looking at their phones, not paying attention to the park. And I was like, oh my God, I think it's also started because Vivek Ramaswamy was like, get the cell phones out of schools. And some friend of mine's arguing why you would want to reduce technology in a place of learning. And I just thought, well, I mean, technology is only so important to an extent. Like, we should have kids not looking at their phones. They should be focusing, like, look what's happening to the world. I'm an old man and the world didn't used to be like this. And I look back and I'm like, actually, even before I was alive, kids looked at TVs all their lives. Hell, I looked at TVs all my life. I'm on a TV right now, arguably. Maybe we don't really understand what we're talking about when we say we have to reduce staring at phones and screens. Like, maybe this is completely normal, and like I'm just completely being an asshole. I looked at the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's about young children using smartphones. Some people are against it, but then I looked at L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth, and isn't that the whole point of Battlefield Earth, is that they take this learning machine projected at these human slaves, and they end up becoming accelerated. So is it true that like these machines, these mobile devices, these screens and everything, they're really reducing us into primitive ape people? Or can we use them to educate ourselves to become gods? And like so much of the movies you're talking about are uplifting, elevating, making you think about things a new way. I mean, can it be a great thing?
I think yes. I think from my personal experience, I definitely am grateful for it. I've learned things that I don't think I could have learned without at least staring at a screen for a couple of hours at a time, you know?
I mean, you might have been able to learn some of those things, which you could have gotten hurt. You know, it's like I learned so much about World War II without having to be there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, it's funny because like a lot of my friends do some physical stuff like skateboarding and sports, and they're big on like the Instagram thing. Like they'll see cool shit on Instagram related to what they already do. So it's kind of like you said, an accelerant. But I don't know, the opposite is also true, where there, you know, some people just don't learn shit when given a screen, and they kind of just like doom scroll through a bunch of stuff. So maybe the problem isn't the screen themselves, it's priming a person to use them properly and responsibly.
Well, the issue with the phones is not necessarily the phones themselves, but the fact that they have internet connectivity wherever they go. It's like you can only do so much on a phone if you're not browsing the internet. And so yeah, you could just a partial solution, like if you had like Wi-Fi blockers, like in if you had a way to block out Wi-Fi. I mean, obviously some people think security risks, whatever, you can't block out Wi-Fi. Well, we did that in public schools for a very long time. What is that Wi-Fi feeding into the brains of everyone? And is that screen the thing, like an extension of what that alien was doing to the person? Are these screens, do they come from a centralized force that's trying to indoctrinate you into believing certain things? An argument can be made, yes, at any given point, because like, well, who creates the content? That is always the issue. And who creates a vast majority of content are corporations, and corporations that exist under a mode of existing where profit is the greatest virtue. Yeah, I can think of very obvious reasons why that could be a bad thing. You know, I don't understand how anyone could not see, you know, a conflict of interest there. And so if you get people, I have plenty of criticisms for the public education system. Like, it's full of flaws and full of ways where we exist in a system where we're trying to create factory workers in a world where factory work doesn't exist quite like it did in the 20th century. So that is its own issue. And yes, we can talk about that and address the issues that come with all of that. So there are plenty of criticisms we can apply, but let's say I'm a good-hearted person, a good-hearted teacher that's trying to, you know, raise good-hearted thinking individuals. Do I want them having access to, you know, an infinite information screen, or without giving them some sort of context? Like, okay, here's what you're looking at. They could be looking at porn, you know, like why? Obviously, if you give a child a device like that, you're going to have some sort of common sense when you give it to them. You're going to put some sort of parental blockers. So just the maximum parental blocker is taking it away, and you can't objectively say that you should just give, you know, unhinged or unregulated information to the minds of children and think it's not going to come with, you know, stupid consequences. Like, at some point you have to be a responsible adult. There is no like magic, you know, there is no magic, you know, supreme amazing genius that it takes to figure that out. It's like, yes, there are going to be contexts in which we shouldn't be giving, you know, full adult technology to the mini humans, you know, to developing minds. It's like, are we trying to look out for the species, or are we not trying to look out for the species? Me personally, I'm trying to look out for the species. It's like, I'm not just going to give machine guns to toddlers. You know, that's what it's like, a machine gun for your mind. It's I'm sorry, I got a little impassioned there, but it's like, wow,
No, it's
wow.
good.
I mean, I don't agree or disagree, but I would say, like, as a counter argument, that it's not knowledge that fucks everything up, it's ignorance. So I don't know, maybe that's what it is. You can't have one without the other. Like, if you're going to educate kids, you can't just put filters on it, and you can't try to, like, you know, maybe it is all or nothing. Maybe they either have to be slaves, or you have to give them the power of the gods and respect, you know, even as children, that hopefully hope for the best, you know, like, they're going to do right things with that info. I'm sure not all will, but some
knowledge
will.
doesn't necessarily matter as much as wisdom. You know, you can get so much knowledge. And so, for instance, you might have a if then else statement, like, if crossing street, then look both ways. You know, and you might understand right and wrong from this. The less knowledge you have, the easier it is to be wise, street smart. But if you're getting more data, more knowledge, you have more nuances, more caveats to how you look at something. Like, well, this is true unless this is the case. And we're seeing this with AI. The more data it has, the more exceptions to rules it have. So knowledge isn't always the thing that helps you. It can be useful, but wisdom is knowing what to do beyond, you know, regardless of more data. The more data you have, the more you find out you were already correct in your wisdom. I think maybe I'm wrong here, but that's something that we don't really focus on as a society enough, I think, is wisdom, how to use that data.
Yeah, that probably has to come with some level of lived experience, right? Because that's the idea. Like, yeah,
I think children can be really wise. I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, a lot of I remember thinking of myself as a pretty wise child. That could have just been me as a narcissistic child.
I think
But
children
I know
are,
a lot of
yeah,
old people that are not wise. And I remember as a child knowing for sure that they were unwise adults and being wise enough to know that I was wiser than them.
well, I see kind of like phases, right? As a child, you're so pure in a lot of ways, which makes you wise in a lot of ways, because if you're not really considering like how dark things could get or how negative things could really get on a material level, then you know life is pretty good. And it's, you know, you have the wisdom of someone who's been untainted by like the traumas of like adult living. Then you become an adult, then you go through those traumas, you meet those awful people, you have those awful experiences, and then you become something completely different. Now, if you can never unlive those experiences, you can never unlive the evils, you can never unlive the trauma. But if you somehow manage to reach the emotional lightness of a child while still retaining the experience of what you've been through, that's, I guess, a higher phase than just staying at like, yeah, I thought life was all butterflies and then it sucks. And turns out that's just reality. Life just sucks. It's like, no, you could go further. You could say life does suck, but there's still ways to find love. You know, there's still ways to find love within yourself in life and within your environment, you know, love for other things. Like, you know, that's something that has to come with experience. You can't just start out as that third phase. Like, you have to go through the first phase of illusion. You have to have your illusion shattered. Then you have to somehow like build yourself back up after you've been broken. And that is like, I guess, the idea, right? That's the progress, the process.
Well, what about, so someone just posted, what do you think about this? Kalani said, what do you think about apotheosis? So like the act of becoming a god, right? What do you think about that idea that we are, you know, moving towards that goal, apotheosis? Do you believe that that's something that we should be working towards? Do you think we are working towards that?
I think the only thing stopping that is we're already there. It's just a matter of, are we going to collectively accept it as our new reality? Are we going to collectively, I don't think all of us have to accept that either. Only like something like 1% has to like realize like, hey, you know, we're not just these like walking physical beings who only react to like material things. Like we could cultivate wisdom. We could consider a meta narrative. We could do these things with just our minds. So if we could decide collectively to do that, enough of us, then yeah, maybe apotheosis will become something, not really something that happened, just something we had to like wake up to, right?
What about you, Kurt? What do you think about becoming a god? Is that a worthwhile goal? I mean, is that a silly way to, are we trying to become more than we are? I mean, are we just trying to get back to who we should be? Which way are we going? Of course your microphone would stop working right now. Fix that cable. I ask you something serious and you talk to me.
Hello.
It's genius. It's like a politician. I would tell you, but this thing doesn't work. My bad.
Language is limited. That's first of all, language is limited, so it's like I can give you different perspectives on what each connotation means, and that would be a whole thing. So I'm just going to skip that and try to give as much of a direct answer as possible. It's we already, represent the godhood, and so in one way or another, we already are embodiments of the divine. Everything around you is to a certain degree, at least to, certain texts, certain philosophies out there. So it's like, what is there to become if we're already part of that godhood nature? The answer might not be, just nothing. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to achieve. That's probably that. Yeah, there's
This is getting spicy.
Yeah, you could get a lot of different answers when it comes to, what do we achieve if we already have the godhood? And
No. Well, I'm sorry to stop you, but I think another thing to consider is, what do you want to do now that you've attained godhood? Maybe you could do it as a thought experiment. Like, let's say you bought into it, you're a fractalization, you're whatever, and it's like, what do you want to do? Maybe it's not about, well, what are we possibly going to become from here? No, it's like, well, you're God now, dude. What do you want to do with your life? Like, do whatever you fucking want. Hopefully it's nothing evil.
No, I like that answer a lot. That wasn't running through my brain at all, and I just really liked the answer. You got to give props when they come up, like, oh, I liked that a lot. It's like, so you're already a god. What do you do with your life? You're already empowered. What would a totally empowered person do? Like, well, it's like, I already have the ability to overcome all my pains, all my suffering, because I already have that. What is the only thing left to do? That I know I can overcome these things and live a good life. I think, that leads you to, what you think your life's calling is. I think, and sometimes, there's nothing wrong with your life calling, changing. Maybe for some people it changes too much. You can't, want to be a famous singer today and then wake up and decide you want to be a surgeon tomorrow. Maybe you can, I don't know, but I think that gives people problems. But
just to expand on that, like, when it's interesting, because like I think about like manifesting sometimes, and like I think the best descriptions I've heard of it, or like I guess like instructions for it, weren't really like, you think about it and it goes from point A to point B. Like, there has to be like this reality tuning process. It's like, first you have to tune yourself, because that's the only thing you could really control. You tune yourself to the desired reality. So it's like, it has to go through a process of going from one frequency to another, where you go from the singer to the surgeon. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, if you try to force that, then a lot of things could just fall apart, maybe on a quantum level, and just destroy your entire life. Whereas like, if you take the necessary steps to tuning the patterns within you, like your actions, your thought patterns, your emotional patterns, maybe that's like really how manifestation is done. How like godhood is done, how creation is done.
Yeah. So the Marcus Aurelius quote, it roughly goes, if you think to yourself, what is the best thing for my community, you will never be an unhappy, unfulfilled person, because your next action because what's best for the people around you and what's best for your society at large is going to be what's best for you, and vice versa. That message can be a little bit distorted, like, oh, I guess if I'm just
I
a
got
billionaire,
some trolley problems on that one, but yeah.
It can be tempting to think, well, if I'm just a billionaire that owns everything, that'll be great for everyone because it's great for me. That isn't necessarily the case. You shouldn't necessarily want to have too much power in your life, for sure. But yeah, I think if that also equally puts the thought in your brain of like, well, I could either be a billionaire or I could sacrifice my entire life for the greater good if need be. If those two thoughts equally are in your brain, maybe it'll lead you to better decisions in your life and just a more fulfilling life in general. That all the coolest people in our brains, that aren't in recent memory, they were heroes. They did something awesome. Or at least, supposedly we remember that as doing something awesome. Jesus, he gave up his life. The Buddha, he gave up all his riches from his family to become the Buddha and realize, there's more to this, than just the material things and the power that I have around me. There's so much more to life than just that. There's, the great awakening from your own suffering. I'm sure, there's probably, I don't know much about Islam, but I'm sure, there's similar themes there. What other, Taoism, there's definitely elements of that in there.
Do you think there's ways to turn like those things into a more crystallized or even more palatable way where normal people who aren't necessarily like spiritual or religious or esoteric or occult scholars could just like listen to and be like, actually, this kind of makes sense. Like, one of the things I would say is like the ratio between service to self and service to others. I don't think it could be equal. It has to be like 51% service to others and 49% service to self. And if you go too far either way, like, I don't know, maybe you'll have problems in either your life or the lives of those around you.
Yeah, it's like what if this reality, if you take on such a burden that just tears you to shreds, you know? It's like,
yeah.
that's a very real possibility. Like, I empathize with a couple of my coworkers. My boss, I consider him to be a pretty good guy. He's been working physical manual labor. He doesn't own the store, but he's the brother-in-law to the store owner. But he's, been doing the heavy lifting. He comes into work. He's about 63, I believe now, and you can see he's in a lot of physical pain from doing what he's been doing for 30 years. It's manual labor jobs. They can be really hard on people. They can be really hard over time, and so it's like, that's a tough reality to face. Like, do I want to sacrifice my body to do this one singular thing? It really makes you think about, am I doing good things in the world? I think he is. I think there are always trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. But that's the tough thing. It's going to be, if you have a family and your family depends on you, it's like, the degree to which they depend on you, you want to be around long enough to make sure they survive once you pass on. So it's like, you want to at least make sure you accomplished a great mission of allowing people to pass on the torch before you yourself keel over. And that's the degree. Well, maybe if you sacrifice too early, it'll be really bad for the people around you. And, that's why, that's why probably most figureheads would be like, yeah, that's why suicide is bad, is because you don't realize how much people love you or care about you. Do
you like the trolley problem?
No, because it's already solved. Sorry.
How is it already solved? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to go back to that afterwards.
It's already solved in the sense where it's a really sociopathic experiment. The guy, there was obviously evil minds that were behind the trolley, and like, the more as a society we're focused on the people getting ran over, the less we're focused on the people that actually set up the sociopathic situation in which they are actively deciding that people are going to get murdered.
Right. Well, the trolley costs money because the trolley is capitalism. That's everyone's paying to get on the trolley. I agree with that. It's capitalism itself is the trolley.
Yes, and like, the whole trolley problem is essentially a mass thought experiment designed to distract everyone from the reality. Like, no, you need to be murdering the people that are trying to murder the trolley people, because they set up a situation in which someone is going to die. It's another metaphor for essentially what is the Hunger Games. What is the answer to the Hunger Games? To participate in the Hunger Games? Is like, no, you just get rid of all the screwed up people that created the Hunger Games. That's why the trolley problem is solved. And so
I like the variant loop where it's like you can divert it in a circle again, like you can, but it's only going to go back and start over. So you have to keep diverting it and buying time for the 5 people that are going to die for as long as you can stay awake. So you're like for 24, 36 hours standing there, flipping the thing, hoping that eventually someone creates an alternative that you can get them off the track or save their lives. But
it's like Snowpiercer.
How long can you go trying to keep the trolley problem from killing these people?
Actually, yeah, Snowpiercer really is just like one big trolley problem.
The real trolley problem was the people we railroaded along the way. That was a comment. I'm sorry. That one it made me laugh. I like that one a lot. But now the real problem is to derail the trolley and kill all the people on the trolley car.
Right. That's the Stalin approach where you run over 5 people and then you shoot the other person on the other tracks from the train so that everyone has equity.
I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny.
What about virtual reality? You're inside of a simulation and the trolley problem's not real.
What's the question, I guess?
I mean,
what would you do? Would you pull the lever?
Yeah. Would you still try to save their lives knowing that they're not even real? You're not even saving real lives.
I would just take off the MetaMask because I'm like, who the fuck bought this thing? This is worthless. Just take off the mask and like, I'm problem solved. I'm in reality again.
I'd probably treat it like an RPG game. I would first pull the lever and then I'll be like, all right, can I go back to the previous save file, please? And then just like try doing it the other way and see what I feel better about and just go with that one. Save scum. Save scum the trolley problem.
I think we've agreed that by the
You
time
throw your
we're on a
avatar
trolley
on the
problem,
tracks.
society is a problem. If your society is the trolley, then society is a problem. But what do you do then? Like, can you create a new scenario, a new answer? What do you do if it's not enough to pull the switch? Do you let 5 people die and then dismantle? Like, hopefully the crashing of the train means that they're going to rebuild a new society, a new trolley, a new world that doesn't have this trolley problem. I mean, is that what you're trying to kind of saying? Is like, we're stuck with this trolley problem until we like have a sacrifice, and then we're able to make a new system where we're not using trolleys to run people over generally?
Which person are you directing?
I mean, it's
You.
the whole meta, man. Yeah, Kurt, I'm very curious what you have to say, especially when you stutter like Hugh Grant. It's like one of my favorite things you do.
Hey,
I'll be right
thanks.
back. I gotta turn the kettle on. Speaking of Hugh Grant.
That was pretty British, yeah.
I think you're rephrasing what I was saying essentially. Yes, the problem is identifying that the problem is it's trying to teach us something, but it's trying to teach us something, that a psychopath would teach us. Like, it's your duty to step in because, like, you have to focus your energy on the end solution and not the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is something really, really insidious.
Right, but like, so like, focusing on that the problem is that there's a trolley problem, right? Like, it's not a you problem, it's a trolley problem. So what do you do if you're living in that world? Do you just do you deny that world? I mean, it's happening, let's say. Like, how do you end it? How do you really stop this from happening? It seems like the trolley crashing is the answer. You have to crash the trolley, which God knows how many people are on the trolley. There's at least a trolley driver and maybe like an entire crew and some audience. Like,
it takes a certain level of egoism and narcissism to even participate. Like, the moment you say, "I'm going to save people," it's like, well, you're going to save people. Like, how do you know that the lever is going to perform the action that you want it to? The trolley might be full of people. If you pull the lever and it goes off track, it might be going fast enough that you kill everybody on the trolley anyway. And so that's where, it's that whole problem is a little bit predatory on the cultural assumptions that we have as a society. It's like, it's our goal just, I'm trying to phrase it.
It's the Riddler and Batman. Like, you can choose between Batgirl and Robin or something. You know what I mean? Like, you can save one, but you can't save the other. Like, they forced someone psychotic and evil has forced this infrastructure to exist for the purpose of making you make a choice that's not a good choice at all. And so what can you do to get outside of that infrastructure?
So Batman, being the heroic person that he is, he wouldn't, like, chances are, I'm guessing Batman was the person that was trying to, was this a real story or no in the comics? Was this a story in the comics or no?
Yeah, it was at least in the Batman movie with Batman Forever or Batman and Robin, whichever one had that's at the end of the movie there,
So Batman,
you have to choose. Remember Jim Carrey,
All right. So it's in one of the retro Batmans. That sounds really cool. I didn't watch those yet, but I want to because people say they're really good. So I'm assuming that Batman didn't actually decide. Like, he tried to find a way to save them both, right? That's probably what Batman would do. That's
what Batman does. Yeah, he saves people.
Yeah,
Batman, he does both. He actually does save everyone in that scenario.
Spoiler alert, but that's what his intention. It would, to him, it would have been a horribly evil compromise to choose to kill someone. Essentially, by even attempting to choose, you are attempting to kill someone. And so, like, if we're following Batman's logic, if we think Batman is the moral pinnacle of society, then we have to assume that even choosing to touch the lever on the trolley is an act of evil in and of itself. And if you disagree with that, well, you just hate Batman. Yeah. Do you want to hate Batman? Is that what you want to do?
There's a trolley problem like that. It's like you can pull the trolley and you can save all the lives, but then you're taking away Spider-Man's ability to save everybody, and you're like, do you take away Spider-Man's heroic moment?
By killing these people, you could save thousands, potentially millions. I mean, it's just basically reframing the same thing, but now Spider-Man's involved. It's like, we can't have a world without Spider-Man. What are you, serious? You know how many people would die?
This used to be a major APM-ism long ago, I think, years ago. We were focusing on trolley problems a lot more. And trolley problems seems to have been pushed out of the zeitgeist a bit, because it seems like we've kind of conquered this idea that it's really whether or not you want to be a utilitarian or whether or not you want to be a narcissist. But it's still, I think the idea that you're saying, Kurt, is that we need to escape the trolley problem in general and come up with new solutions. I just don't know exactly if we found the solution there, like to end trolley problems as we know them. Like, why do they exist at all? Well, it's because society is wrong. Society is killing people, and everything that acknowledgement at very least says that if we all know that, then we can work together towards escaping this trolley problem. There shouldn't be people on the tracks,
Exactly. You understand me perfectly.
So then, I mean, you would, I guess the idea is you wouldn't have trolley problems if we had a Batman or a Superman. I mean, metaphorically speaking. So how do you become that figure? Like, I'm not saying any one of us are, but how would an individual?
That's straight up Apotheosis, Ubermenschian. Like Superman is, the Ubermensch, right? So,
which is, I guess, why APM turned to that eventually, right? It's like, because we realized like that's the only way to transcend it. And it's like, if you embody that, you don't have to force anyone, because they could see it and they could act. If you don't have to evangelize anyone, you could just be that thing, and then they'll be like, how did you do that?
A gingerbread trolley problem.
That's morbid but cute. Adorable.
So, I mean, it's just because like right now, it's also a trolley problem is the way we say, oh, we would never engage in a trolley problem, but so many of the questions and topics I try to avoid bringing up right now, like for instance, healthcare, quarantine, the 2020, 2019, viral infection, blah, blah, blah. Even just Ukraine and Russia, right? Like this idea of there's a trolley problem of like, there's bombs about to be dropped and they're going to be landing on this side or that side of a border. Is a trolley problem. And every American, and I think most people in the world I interact with from all over the world, force them, they would know that the trolley problem is ridiculous. I mean, if you really took the second to think about it, Kurt would agree. I think most people would agree with Kurt that the trolley problem is ridiculous. But we're in trolley problems, and people are just making binary choices that are leading to the deaths of ensuring the death of somebody will die, because we're making binary choices and we're not trying to figure out how to get outside of them. And I see that every day, right? Like that's what politics have become, people choosing between the deaths of one or another.
Yeah. And I think one of the foundational aspects that cause trolley problems is probably scarcity or perceived scarcity mentalities. It's like, oh, we have to do this, otherwise we're going to be short, a life or two or three, or I have to get on this trolley, otherwise I'm going to be late. I don't have enough time. So yeah, I think it's a lot of it has to do with a scarcity mindset. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm listening though.
No, what do you think, Kurt? Do you feel like that we're literally trapped from having solutions because of our scarcity mindset? Maybe that's it.
Hey, Hunger Games. It's a perfect metaphor. Hunger Games. That's why the series was written.
So why is Hunger Games the perfect metaphor? Because we could just stop having the Hunger Games, and we choose not to because that's the zeitgeist.
It's the zeitgeist / people aren't fully aware that it is the Hunger Games. They haven't sufficiently identified the problem. It's like, well, it's like. There also is like the revolving door of like people feel a sense of hopelessness instead of identifying the problem and tackling it. The people in charge introduce a fentanyl crisis. There's a lot of that, and so part of me thinks that that might be a big reason for a lot of corporate backlash to Trump, is he's very anti things like fentanyl. You know, he doesn't like fentanyl trafficking, and so corporations, they actually love it. They love that because it keeps up artificial scarcity on people. So I have to say this. It's ironically because I feel like I could get murdered randomly for this type of statement, but the fact that I think that I could get murdered randomly, it's like, well, that makes me less likely to get murdered because, like, oh, dang it, we
That's
can't do it
narcissism.
now. Yeah, we can't murder him now. Like, he called his
That
shot.
would be too obvious. Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's
I bank on that too. I don't know if it'll work, but I hope you're right.
yeah. Or I get a knock on my door from the CIA agent who's been, you know, following me for a few weeks now. It's we live in a world. That's all I know.
Okay,
But
so
I did.
Go ahead.
I got pulled over by the police over the weekend.
What?
Yeah, they followed me for a while. They said I went over the lines. That's the reason they always, like, if they're trying to just like catch you riding dirty or something, they always say, you went over the lines, man. It's
Dude, I've gotten pulled over like 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I just got my new car and I was getting in some trouble. But it's all good. I wasn't endangering lives or anything. So
yeah, like that's weird because I'm like supposed to be this white male conservative who loves cops, but what do you call 9 cops buried up to their necks in sand? Not enough sand. And I have friends who are cops. Like, so this is the thing. It's hard for me because, you know, we don't live in a world where the Freemasonic experiment was supposed to be that everyone was a sovereign who governed themselves. And that just simply hasn't really worked. And then the government's like that book. I was going to ask if you read, if you give a mouse a cookie. You know what I mean? Like the government, if you give them a cookie, they're going to want milk. And then they're going to want a straw for their milk. And they're going to want a plate for their cookies. It just keeps going on and on and on. So we're pushing further and further away from people making their own decisions for themselves and putting them into the paradigm of you can choose which trolley, which track you want to go on that we've built for you.
I mean, honestly, this might sound brutal, but I think possibly the only solution is to just destroy the trolleys. Is to like be capable enough to take a sledgehammer and completely dissect every trolley and be like, see how fucking meaningless this is? And you can't do that just by telling them. Like, you have to be able to be a figure that could, you know, with some level of conscious authority to be able to dissect these properly.
Every trolley I've ever been on, every time I've been on a tram or a subway, you know, like there's some drunk kid jumps in front of the tram. For the most part, God bless. Like the trams can stop themselves. People, there's a guy on the tram, there's a lady on the tram, and they can slow down the tram. So we're already building a paradigm that's not in our nature because trams and trolleys seem to be able to stop. And we're telling ourselves that they can't stop. And so you're going to supply that with your reality. I mean, yeah. Do you have any thoughts on to give a mouse a cookie, Kurt? I mean, that feels like your kind of book. Have you read that one with the mouse and the cookie?
I'm sorry, I have not.
Dude, this is a book for you. I feel like you would have read this book by now, but you have to read this book. If you give a mouse a cookie, it's a pretty interesting story. And basically the idea, yeah, you go ahead and explain it.
Oh no, I love I like this story a lot, and it was one of the books I was read as a child, and another book
they were trying to raise you right.
Another book was a lot of like Shel Silverstein books. One that I will never forget was The Giving Tree, and that kind of reminds me of like If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, just from like a different take of it. It's really about like taking, like one's about taking, and the other was just about pathologically giving, I guess.
My dad had a laptop and I got him a vinyl coat for the top of it that was The Giving Tree, and he really, really hated it. He was really upset about it.
Yeah, right. It's Shel Silverstein is a messed up dude. Like that guy. Yeah, he wrote kids books, but there was something up with him. Love his work though. His shit is so good.
Dude, Shel Silverstein. Have you seen him? This is what he looks like. Weird looking guy. You know what I mean? This is the kind of guy who's writing books for kids. Anytime you think about children's media and someone says, "Oh, it's for kids," just remember Shel Silverstein. Realistically, you know, looks like Anton LaVey crossed with some Tamil gypsy. It's amazing. So, what was the other one I was going to ask about? Okay, so we talked about this on the last the show I just did earlier with the healer.
I was listening.
Keith, was that Trump gets all these prayers. So I was wondering about prayers for Trump. And do you think that, I mean, because Trump seems like he's changed a lot, maybe not just because he got shot in the ear, but that there's something like he's like a spiritual person.
He's definitely
more.
schooled. He's definitely schooled. He knows his shit. Like he's been Alex Jones literally talked about how he would listen for like 500 hours at a time, like Manly P. Hall tapes or some shit.
Yeah.
And
he watches like minister. I think Paula Kane White. He loves watching televangelist Paula Kane White. He's into it, you know, in his own little room.
I think a good question though, in regards, if we just collectively agree, it's like, yeah, Trump knows like his warlock stuff, I guess. Is he more of like an Ubermensch, or is he more of a knight of faith? You know, because like essentially they're the same thing, except one gives their will to God, whereas the other one just completely owns his own will for himself. It's kind of like Jedi and Sith, if you really think about it. So it's like Trump, if he is schooled on the magic and the Force, like, is he a Sith or a Jedi?
What do you think? You know what Knight of Faith is in German, right? Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard means Knight of Faith. So you can maybe even take Soren Kierkegaard versus Nietzsche on that level. What do you think about I think it's fascinating what you just said, Chris. I wonder, what do you think about that, Kurt? This idea of the Knight of Faith versus the Ubermensch. Like,
there's they have a lot of overlap conceptually, but there's one key difference, which is the belief in God.
Oh yeah, these ideas from the way they're presented, they can complement each other. So it's like there's a way to appreciate the flaws of certain philosophies and also recognize their strengths. It's the whole baby and bathwater thing. It's like, just because, you know, Nietzsche might have said some questionable things about some certain races, it doesn't mean, you know, his whole Ubermensch philosophy was totally unjustified or not useful, you know? So, yeah, there were a lot of points when, like, I was reading one of Nietzsche's works, and when you get through some of it, it's like, that doesn't seem philosophical. It seems ideological. You know, sometimes it feels like he was coming from a flawed ideological standpoint. But of course, he says a lot of great things too. So it's like that's the way with a lot of philosophers. You know, so. Yeah, I think if you round out your Ubermensch with some Kierkegaard, you're going to be a stronger human being. That's why, yeah, Knight of Faith. It's like for a while being Stoic was kind of trendy. It's like, well, like if you combine your Stoicism and, you know, get into other schools of thoughts, you shouldn't get onto, you know, philosophical. You shouldn't incorporate one philosophy into your life without reading up on other ones. I recommend you can't make one philosophy your entire personality. That's it doesn't. I don't think it produces great end results. You can't be, you know, totally. It makes you one dimensional, and that was one problem with the, you know, the Stoic school of thought, is because it became very one dimensional, and it's. You need to take everything with like, okay, how's this useful? How does my philosophy become a Swiss Army knife?
So I think a good example of that, like if we're talking about the duality between the Ubermensch and the Knight of Faith, I think if you're poor in life or doing like really bad, like your life is just down in the dumps, you should tap into your Ubermensch. You should tap into your will and whatever. But when your life is like together and you have abundance and you have like a little more money than you need, then you should probably, you know, like start going the Knight of Faith route. Otherwise, like if you cross those wires, you start blaming God for your terrible life, and then you start like being consumed with ego with your great life.
Did you remember that a couple days before Valentine's Day, I posted that Google the difference between why is my husband yelling versus why is my wife yelling at me? Why is my husband yelling at me? Help is available. Top result. Call this 800 hotline. Why is my wife yelling? Well, potential triggers for wife yelling include feeling unheard, financial stress, mental health struggles, disrespect. This is your fault, right? You need to fix it. And with the adage, Stoic men are difficult to manipulate and therefore unattractive.
I remember.
Do you think there's something to that, or am I just making a joke?
It's not. I don't think that it's that they're they're harder to manipulate. Maybe that does make them unattractive. I don't know. That seemed just like kind of just a satirical little jab.
Kurt.
A lot of lulls to be had, that's for sure. If I can change it up, I think I got onto a pretty good invention. All right, so I take a pork loin, pretty cheap, right? And I smoke it for about 3 hours with some cherry, specifically some cherry, after giving it a marinade and some apple cider vinegar overnight, maybe some garlic in there, a little bit of basil. Let that smoke catch the drippings and make those drippings into a gravy. And then I chop up the loin and I put it onto a sandwich and then pour that gravy over the sandwich. If you guys
I don't know if this is a metaphor for my life, but I will follow
This
you
is
anyway.
ASMR right here.
No, I think you guys would really, really enjoy that sandwich.
I think so.
Yeah, don't know what to call it, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so I might call
Well,
it.
do you have any substitutes for pork for the kosher listeners?
No, go fuck yourself.
Oof. Big oof.
You know what? Live your dream. That's what I like to say. But it's the same thing for a lot of people. I don't know. Yeah.
I think horses are more untouchable than pigs. I don't know. But
wait. Going back to what Andreas was saying before, Stoicism, right? Making men harder to manipulate. I don't know if that's necessarily true, right?
Isn't it the point of Stoicism to be making your own choices out of action and not
suppose.
being reactionary? Or what do you mean? Let's go with what you're thinking. Why don't you think that's always?
No, I mean, I guess because the way it ended just made it like the whole thing seem less serious. But I guess it's true. If you're earnestly, sincerely stoic, then I guess that does sort of make you harder to manipulate. But does that make you unattractive though?
I mean, yeah. So what does it mean to be attractive? Isn't a big thing that you want to grow with someone and change with someone. And if they refuse to grow and change with you because they're growing and changing on their own accord, then isn't that maybe not vulnerable enough to have the same kind of relationship you can have with a codependent person that's trying to grow because you're growing and vice versa?
It's a good question. I mean, I know some people like feel like they really don't have a grip on, like they don't have a true North Star themselves. And that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't think everyone needs to have like this intense drive and single-minded purpose and everything. Some people just really want to go with the flow. And maybe it would help them out just to have like a guy who doesn't really bend to external will, or even a woman, you know, like a partner that doesn't bend to external will, because you already have the bending will. And if both of you have bending wills, and it's like the blind leading the blind almost. Whereas, you know, so at least now I don't have to worry about shit. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you are the person with the North Star and you can't allow anything to compromise that, you know? And some people could just get down with that, I guess.
Someone voted to call it the pig pen sandwich, which I think is a good name for Pennsylvania pig sandwich.
Very nice. Very nice. I like it.
What part of the animal is the loin, by the way?
Couldn't tell you.
The loin cut is so. Let me show you a picture right here. Here's the top of the pig. See, right up there. That's the loin right there. You can see here's a bunch of pieces: tenderloin, chop, ribs, steak, all etc. Loin right there. Yeah. Okay.
The back chop, basically.
But you know, I mean, I'd say to anybody who wants to, you know, I'd love to see Kurt watch Oakjaw while eating a pork sandwich. This movie about genetically modified hippo pig, this little Korean girl that falls in love with her animal she's taking care of. You know, she's growing this, you know, animal to be slaughtered, and then they put the animal through all the slaughterhouses. Like, that's a fun movie to eat a pork sandwich while watching, right?
I felt that way eating chicken cutlet right after watching Chicken Run. Just really messed up. I was like a little kid too.
Yeah, I think I had a chicken pot pie while watching that movie also, which is even worse in a weird way, because like here's what's left of that chicken.
That movie, that they really went all out with that.
What bothers me about that is this idea that you become, you know, a vegetarian, you're murdering billions of microbes, and you think of yourself as not murdering. And I think that's so much more dangerous, you know, like for someone to acknowledge that they're murdering and being like, well, it's a circle of life, kind of psychopathic, admittedly, but it's better than someone who's like, I'm better than you because I rape dates. You know, I'm a date rapist. I just hold down this bag of fruit and I eat them and they can't even scream. You know, you're like, well, that's kind of crazy.
That's so funny because there was Keanu Reeves had a cameo in this movie. It was like an Asian rom-com on Netflix. So it was like an Asian American rom-com. And they were at this really fancy restaurant, and they had like ridiculous portions and courses. But one of them was they were eating like a steak while wearing like headphones where you listen to the moos of the cows that gave their lives for your specific steak. And that's pretty much like your exact like example. Like,
Yeah, give vegetables a choice. You know what I mean? Like we should probably genetically modify broccoli to scream, and so that way every time you eat vegetables, every time you cut it should you should hear it screaming in pain. You know, and now I think that would help a lot. Vegetarians could be wrong, but isn't it easier then to imagine a kid who's raised killing animals? Like I think that's the other thing. There's a difference between someone who just gets their food at the store and someone who hunts and farms vegetables. There, you know, you're killing vegetables you grew yourself. That's even closer. But you could be a meat eater or vegetarian so long as you're actually involved with the raising and slaughtering of your food. Like if you're cutting down the vegetables. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's so much. Those things are closer, vegetarians and meat eaters at that point, than someone who eats at the store and food only from the store, and someone who collects and hunts and gathers and cultivates. Right?
have you ever heard of this animated Seth Rogen movie where I think like Michael
The
Cera
hot
was
dog
in it?
one.
Yeah,
So Brittany's
Sausage party.
kid,
Sausage Party. Yeah.
Brittany's kid has like trauma. I don't know if you ever saw.
Holy
the movie, actually.
shit! Oh,
I think he might
no.
have seen a part of it or something. But whenever he sees like the cassette cover, like the DVD case of it, he's thrown into like, you know how like some people will faint if they see blood. Like he gets so, you know, uncomfortable about that
Jesus.
Sausage Party tape, and
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
blame him at all, because
that movie is
wow,
yeah.
it must be bad. So I went and looked into it, but I can't finish all of it, and I want to because there's like a thing about DMT and like the ending
and the
seemed kind of
tripping,
cool. Yeah, but like to get to that point, you have to go through so much of this like Bohemian Grove homoerotic sex party stuff that it's just, and there's all this sort of like, you know, Eucharistic baptism, like seminal baptism that happens from these hot dogs. It just seems like that's a lot for a kid. And I feel
This is the
bad
most
for him.
serious analysis I've ever heard in my life of this one movie.
I wonder how that's possible that other people don't do that, because it seems pretty much like when, again, with Shel Silverstein?
Shel Silverstein?
Shel Silverstein, right? That how can anyone think that this media is childlike just because it's made for children? You know, the same thing with anything else. You have so many neurotic intellectuals that are making this stuff. How can it really be so simplistic, right?
Yeah, Food Party is there's something demonic about it now that you mention it, because it's just like this constant collision of sexualized violence, and like violent sex. It's pretty bad. It's pretty brutal. Like it could probably do things to you subliminally.
You don't have any sort of fears of Sausage Party, Kurt? You're okay with that movie?
I watched that movie in theaters, and I was like,
I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't know about you guys.
I knew that was coming too. It was fun. It was good times.
That would be a really funny segment. It's like you see us like lamenting about how awful and dark it is, and then Kurtz comes out. He's like, "Yo, that was a great movie, guys. Glad we
How
came."
we balance things.
it's like the inversion of, you know, all the unreal, the unrealism of like Disney. It was like meant to be like the inversion of all that, and I love the movie just based off of that alone. You know, it's like inverting that whole Pixar formula to be like, oh yeah, and like I think in some ways it's kind of a commentary of saying like all that Pixar stuff is a little bit more fucked up than, you know, a lot of us want to acknowledge. But, you know, so I mean, I don't know, maybe my mind is really warped, and I just thought it was good from the get-go.
No, I mean,
like if you take your kids to see that movie, oh yeah, you are like stupid, you know. But like there is no helping you. But I was an adult and I watched the movie, you know, and as an adult I enjoyed an adult oriented movie, you know.
Yeah, but that's like a good poignant example of like what Andreas was saying. It's like depicting vegetables like screaming as you like slice into them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, maybe we should have more concern about life than we do, but I also wonder if we're unable to because we're aware of our own mortality. And so we just try to ignore our own mortality. But maybe that's a big part of why we eat, is to prepare yourself for your own demise.
Mhm.
And what's
Mhm.
going to happen to you, because all the things you eat, particularly vegetarians, my God, when you go into the ground, all those billions and billions of microbes, families, their offspring and they're going to eat you.
Yeah.
They're all going to get you back. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that people think that they're so much more pious because they don't hear the screams of others. I think that's a big thing, is this kind of isolation from the suffering of the world. That's what we do to keep ourselves feeling.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
all I want is I want a seal. When I get a package of meat on the store, I want it to say the farmer that murdered this animal said a prayer for it for the afterlife. Like that's all I really want. And then
Well,
if I can get that guarantee, I'm cool.
There should be a QR code to watch it happen on YouTube, right?
well, that's fucked. Well, morally though, I don't have a horse in the race because I'm a meat eater. But I think one of the things I learned, like studying, there's different ways to look at the whole vegetarian thing. Like you could look at it energetically, the way the Taoists do. They're basically saying it's like when you consume a larger animal, you consume larger stored fear energy, or like fear chi. And you basically consume it, you take that in you because you're consuming a denser being on this planet, as opposed to I don't know, something like a vegetable or something. And it supposedly doesn't have as much stored, maybe you could call it like karmic energy, or like fear energy or emotional energy that kind of like keeps you denser. And I like the way they painted it, because they said it's not necessarily bad. Like if you're a warrior, someone who has to be really like embedded within the material workings of the world, then yeah, you should be like the animals more so. You should consume these animals so you could be more like them, and then you could gain more control over your physical domain. Whereas if you walk a different path, a more spiritually enlightened path, you're like, I want to consume less of another larger animal's fear chi and start consuming like things that are lighter in spiritual or energetic composition. I mean, do I like take all this stuff like literally? And no, but it's really interesting to me,
I don't know. I think all the people that do the Atkins, there's a reason they look amazing. It's like they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting super lean. They're eating that meat, absorbing all the muscle, and they're also getting all the nutrients from the ground. They look like what I want to say. I want to say they look like they're sculpted, straight from Athens,
Yeah. maybe different star seeds have to really work through different paths, which pretty much necessitates different diets, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you should look kind of like who's the man? The man in the square. Who did that guy? Was that
Memory Man argues my point. He says it's stupid to say that Andreas Xirtus, the plants give of themselves to be consumed to help propagation. It is a symbiosis. What do you think about that? Do you think that plants are some sort of altruistic, Emmanuel, messianic?
No, at this point, our modern version of bovine or cattle, it would go extinct if we weren't shooting it and eating it. That's a reality. It's co-evolved with us. So it's like, I guess if you could give it a talk box and say, yeah, I kind of want to go on living life, but at the same time, like we are the thing that is sustaining that form of life. The modern domestic chicken probably would not exist in nature, unless we were consuming it. So like, yeah, if you wanted to be totally, I guess, morally principled, you would essentially have to make these species go extinct unless you wanted to keep, millions of chickens as pets, which doesn't sound sustainable in its own right.
I know Memory Man saying that they choose to give themselves to help their own propagation. Now, I'm a big fan of the omnivore's dilemma, and I think about bees exploiting the pollen of a cherry blossom tree, right? And how the tree's thinking to itself, wow, I got this bee to think he's exploiting me, but I'm exploiting this bee because they're carrying all my pollen out and they're spreading me. But is that the same? Because there's something different about taking the pollen from the flowers and cutting down and killing trees, or broccoli, right? Like you're killing a carrot, you're pulling its roots out. You're not just like snipping its toenails or cutting its hair. It's not like the Janes or something.
What if like every time you're a farmer and then you skip like picking one out of the ground, they just get really upset. They're like, "What the fuck? You don't want to eat me? You don't want to consume my body? Like I worked so hard to grow for you, and you don't want to pluck me out of the ground and chop me up and put me in a dish or a stew? Come on, man. I thought we were pals."
And remember, man, we're not talking about chickens. I mean, we're talking about like bovines. Like if you think about it, cows today cannot breed themselves. They're so big. It's the same like silkworms is a good example. Silkworms cannot sustain themselves in nature because we spent so many thousands of generations raising them to produce silk. And so at this point, it's another parasitical symbiote where we're the only reason that they're alive. So, and a lot of things are like that. And it's a very, human, narcissistic thing that we're keeping things alive, but we're choosing which species don't go extinct based on their relationships with us in a lot of ways. As South Park had this thing where everyone switched to Beyond Beef, so they had to go out and kill all the cows because the farmers weren't going to have a reason to sell them anymore, right? So they're just
yeah. Ironic, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the solution, I don't know if it's ever possible, but I said this from like early on APM streams when I started coming on. I was like, humans should learn photosynthesis. We should figure out how to do this. We should figure out how to like change our skin in a way to give us nutrients and for us to just need like sugar water or whatever.
It's all just indirect photosynthesis when you think about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's just synthesis. It's extra steps basically between you and the sun.
Duality. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could cut away the gaps. But then, I don't know, maybe that'll come with some severe consequences. If we sustain on nothing but sunlight and sugar water, maybe we become more like bugs or something.
I don't know. I think there's some monks out there that might have figured out the formula.
Oh, hell yeah. I heard those stories. I've heard those stories. They ate nothing for like fucking 40 days straight and they just managed to live. It's pretty crazy. It's like live pickling yourself.
I mean, in memory, man, I could be making a bad devil's advocate point. I don't know. I mean, I still feel that this wasn't really about that, but it's about the pretentiousness of vegetarians thinking that somehow they're not part of the circle of life because they found some sort of a loophole. And I think that I still think that's far more dangerous than somebody who like a hunter gatherer, like a Native American who hunts the bison. Like, I'm sorry, I don't have any problem with a Native American hunting a bison. I have far more problems with some liberal arts major who thinks that they're innocent when they're part of this world.
No, you're right. I don't think I would ever be a vegetarian from like a liberalist, like bleeding heart for the animals perspective. But the energy one, that I do kind of take seriously. Like if I ever had to walk, if I had to walk a path where it's like necessitates maybe just a lighter buildup, material, physical buildup, then yeah, I'll just go with veggies. What were you saying, Kurt?
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Well, that's the other moral dilemma you get into, just because we are one species on this planet. Like, you're not stopping the process of consumption. If anything, it feels like you're kind of being left behind because it's like, oh, all the other animals are consuming things. Like, what? I'm missing out on that experience. I mean, that's a perspective. Is like, well, if you really want to be morally superior, just go murder all the lions. That way they aren't taking down the gazelles. It's like, well, no. It's like you can't. If you are going out to murder the lion, you're essentially approving. In a way, you are approving of what that lion is doing to survive. Why aren't you showing yourself that same compassion?
Well, we could also talk about like the kind of psychic damage that like just with food, not even anything else. Like with food, this is the kind of psychic damage you could do if you consume things with specific intentions. I guess like just to consume or whatever, and then like basically cruelty to other living things just for the sake of it. For example, like if you're gonna eat an animal regardless, but you're cruel to it, I think that damages you psychically in a way. And I think one of the ways to nullify that, which is why people have been doing this since like ancient times, like, when you
amoebas have been doing this since ancient times. Bacteria,
but I mean, like, despite the psychic damage that murdering an animal can do to you, what if you just express gratitude to kind of nullify it? You know, like when you pray over a steak dinner, it's like, thank you, God, for this bounty. You know, it's like, thank you, the animal, for sacrificing yourself. You know, I think if you can express gratitude, it'll be less psychically damaging to you to like be not a vegetarian, I guess.
You absorb its soul. That's what happens. Yeah, you got to acknowledge it. You're like, well, thank you. I hope your soul is a great one, and it's gonna feed my own, and you become me. We're a team now. It's
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
interesting, even in the Gita, if you read, like, so all my friends who are Hindus, right? And I was vegetarian, a raw foodist, and only ate parts of plants, like the Jains, like that were so that the plant stayed alive for like several years, you know. And I was skinny and it looked great, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I noticed people that were like these, again, liberal arts dreadlock girls that were just so all pretentious about it. Like I remember standing in line at a Whole Foods. Well, this girl complained. I think actually no, it was like a Safeway. She's complaining about how she wasn't at a Whole Foods at that moment because the town didn't have one yet, and how unethical and just how terrible and primitive and horrible that people were in the town. It's like, oh my God, you know, I just can't. I can't pretend that that feels like the place that my energy needs to be drawn towards. And I just look at the entire cycle of life, and I wonder about what happens when we try to step out of the cycle of life that way. And again, I was trying to say the Hinduism, like you read the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana and the Upanishads, all of these gods and all of these heroes and all of these ancient vegetarian, allegedly Hindu societies, they're all hunting. There's a lot of hunting going on. Rama's killing and hunting, you know. All of these gods are not vegetarians. So I find that interesting that there's a point when India and when the Veda gets into the Jainism, that vegetarianism became more popular, but it's certainly not ancient. It's not ancient. And the original biology shows us amoebas eating bacteria going all the way back to the beginning of what we understand life to be. So it's just, to me, seems kind of insane to pretend that we're going to, and transhumanist. To me, vegetarianism is a form of transhumanism. And I love transhumanism, but you're basically saying, you know what, we're not going to do what nature did because we're better than nature. We're essentially Lucifer. We know better than God. All of these things happen in my mind when someone says we're going to make the world a better place than it already is.
Well, to be honest, this sounds like
rather than making ourselves better.
Yeah, okay. This sounds like a really like a California thing, because like I can't imagine like you see too many of those in like a place where it's really cold often. I mean, I think like vegetarianism would be less of a trend in colder climates, places where you actually experience winters. It sucks, you know, like eating meat does kind of like keep you warm, which is why historically, you know, you see like all those tribes from the north, like they were all consummate carnivores because it helped them win battles pretty much.
Base Kothar, we are Brahmin carnivores. I mean, that's hot, bro. I'm into that.
But you know, if you live in like a constant sunny climate, it's like, do I really need that? Do I really need like, you know, the warmth that consuming flesh provides, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I also agree with Memory Man to eat more jackfruit, because jackfruit's rad. I don't know if you've ever made those like nacho plates with jackfruit. You can do so many cool things with jackfruit. But all right, I don't know. We're supposed to solve all the problems. Are there any more problems that you don't think we've solved? We got like 5 more minutes. What about love? Is love something that we've solved? Have we solved love? Do we understand love? Do we know how to love each other unconditionally and love ourselves?
I think I don't think I'm there quite yet, but I think I got a lot closer than I was a few years ago. You know, like for example,
sure.
like viewing everyone as like the same soul living out the different lifetimes in their own little bodies, and we all go back to the same source at the end. It's like that helps me have unconditional love. You know, no matter how people treat, I could be really upset at the time, like for sure, but I think it's easier for me to like get over it, you know, and that is a kind of a form of love, right? It's like I'll always see, no matter who you are, I'll always see myself in you. Whether you're the most heinous human being in the world or the most pious, like I'll still like be able to relate to you. Yeah, as a souled being, as a being under God, like I could at least relate to you, you know, and in some level care about you always. Because if you have a soul, even if you don't know it, like at least I could connect with you on that level, you know?
What do you think, Kurt? What do you think about love? Loving yourself and loving others. How well do you understand it?
What about love? Don't you want someone to care about?
What's up?
Don't you want someone to care about you? What about love? I'm sorry, that was lame. But
Don't you want somebody? I thought that's where you're going with some Jefferson airplane there. But
No, love is in love is a verb. Love is a doing word. Massive Attack. But yeah, that's
what
Kierkegaard. He wrote like a 700-page book on that. Yeah, that's his whole thesis of works of love. And he apparently sucks because Massive Attack did it in like 3 minutes. But it's like it was a really good book. Love isn't supposed to be just a feeling. Yeah, you feel love for other people, but it's supposed to be a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing that in the process of that difficulty uplifts you, and it uplifts everyone that you come into contact with when it's done. So that's why it's this holy, amazing, sacred, transformative thing and transformative force out there. So yeah, it's a good thing to do, and you can, in fact, do love. You can do love.
I think it's also important to feel the love. Can you feel the love from within?
I can feel the love tonight. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think
life after love, right?
The most intense period of self-love I've probably felt in recent memory was when I guess you could call it a dark night of the soul. Like I had to really reconcile with all the things that I didn't forgive myself for. And basically, I don't know, it was like looking at like my like a little kid version of me, and I was just screaming at it, and I cried. Like my body just like immediately reacted with tears. And that's when I realized, oh, we're not separate. Like you are me. You're just the me that didn't know shit. You're just the me that didn't, understand like your soul and all that shit. And it was, I don't know, it was basically saying like, now we could do it together, like now we could do this the way it's meant to be done. Now I'm awake,
That's pretty legit. Everybody, I want you to go to Spotify and subscribe to American Time Machine. He's got a new album that just came out. You have to listen to it, or else you don't love me. And that would make me sad. So definitely listen to American Time Machine, some of my favorite music that's ever existed. And I love his new album. Get it over with. Our versions, it was worth it. The world has changed. Listen to some of the new El Catedral album. Is that the newest one, right? El Catedral.
Yeah. And the worst mistake ever, or I have a cover story for it now, but admittedly, catedral is feminine in Spanish. So, but
yeah. Well, I thought you were trying to do some sort of like hermaphrodite
Exactly. That's the cover story. That's the great part. You can just invent stories after the fact. But yeah,
what you can do though, you can't use the letter X now for the, so you can actually use X at the end of any word and X as the word the, and so ex cathedral or cathedrix or something like that. All right.
I'm sure Mexicans are very happy about that. But
I really where'd it go? I'll pull this window out for a second.
That's the back channels.
You caught me. No, it's okay. Go to Terrorist Podcast. Subscribe to my favorite friend. He's got some amazing shows right here. 3.5 hours conversation with Shoeshine. He's got some pretty deep combos here. I really recommend you guys listen to these and see what's going on. I'd like to bring some of your friends. We should do a thing where we like kind of do a merger. I'd love to do some Terrorist on X. You can bring your friends and you got some cool conversations here. I'm jealous. I'm jealous, really.
Well, it's because these guys, I guess they're just they're like almost just regular people, and they don't really get a chance to just spit their shit on a mic. And I think the few people that like it, they like it because it's just that perspective. It's not really hindered by like a need for likes, subscriptions, content, and all that shit. They come on my thing, and I'm like, here, speak into this microphone, speak your mind, speak your heart, son. And like the shit that comes out is just fucking great.
Yeah. So and then go to Terrorist on X because you can subscribe to his X, and he says some funny stuff. He said this earlier. I reposted it. Ever since I got the COVID vaccine, I found myself randomly clicking subscribe to Microsoft Windows like 100 times in a row every day. Is this normal? So get on X, follow him, and retweet what he says too, and send me money. Go to Xirtus.com and you can get all of the money you have and melt down your jewelry, and just don't even eat, don't even wear clothes. Just join our cult. Just send us money. I'm definitely kidding, so don't worry about it. But yeah, if you ever did care enough to like send us some money, kind of like our buddy earlier, Base Kothar sent us $10 so he could tell us that we were Brahmin carnivores, which I agree with and I felt really strongly about. And then also Kalani, who asked us a good question about Apotheosis. If you want to be like them, you want to be like the cool kids, you can help us out, help us exist. And Xirtus.com is the easiest way to avoid YouTube taking a cut because, you know, they're soulless horse. And, you know, all right. So we love you very much. I love you guys. You guys are great. Oh, and Think Tank's next. Have a
Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes.